somewhere like here into the place and the person he became.
At the town archive, Nigella meets historian Marina Sassenberg.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Please come with me.
I will do, thank you.
I noticed in my family tree that Samuel Gluckstein was born here. What can you tell me about that and him?
Well, we have one document about that here. It's his birth certificate. Here is the date.
So what's that?
That's 1821.
1821.
Right.
Yes.
Perfect.
Coming back to me.
That's the father, Lehmann.
Right. Lehmann Gluckstein.
Right.
Yes.
Samuel Gluckstein's father, Lehmann, was born near Rheinberg in 1794. His was one of only a handful of Jewish families living in the area.
What kind of a community was it? I mean, I don't know, was it kind of an affluent merchant community, or was it a ghetto, or what?
You know, we are here in the Rhineland area,
yes,
which is a very rural area. And it's very common that Jews worked here as cattle traders or horse dealers.
Do we think that that's what Lehmann did? Do you think he was a cattle trader?
He was something exceptional. He was a teacher.
He was a teacher? How interesting. Would that mean that he wouldn't be teaching, say, in a school of the general population?
No, he was absolutely teaching in a Jewish community. This is very interesting how...
No, I can see that would be is quite significant if you're living among cattle traders and horse dealers.
We can show you a picture of him, actually.
Oh, I'd love to see a picture of him.
There we are.
Oh. Yes, he looks very distinguished. I mean, it's hard to make it out a lot, but it's still nice to see. He does look like a member of the haute bourgeoisie.
This 19th century synagogue, now a museum, is similar to where Lehmann taught Rheinberg's Jewish children. His son, Samuel, would have been educated in most subjects, including English.
Is it possible to have an idea why Samuel would have left here to go to England?
At that time, beginning of the 19th century, there were quite a few riots, and life in a village with the Jewish and Christian population living together wasn't always much fun. There were conflicts. We know there were conflicts in Rheinberg about the synagogue. So we have a wave of migration. Many went to the USA, and we know by now that there was a migration wave of the Jewish population also to England.
Samuel Gluckstein was in his early 20s when he left Rheinberg for England and found lodgings at the house of the girl he would one day marry, Hannah Joseph.
From what we know of Samuel Gluckstein's life, he really lived in pretty poor circumstances when he first got to England, but he absolutely went out there and worked and got himself a life he obviously wanted. But I think that I'd quite like to follow a kind of a linked but separate path, which is his wife, Hannah Joseph, who came from Amsterdam, and I just have to go there and find out about her.
Hannah Joseph was born in 1819. According to Nigella's family tree, her father was Coleman Joseph, a member of the Dutch Jewish community.
Well, I've always known that Anne or Hannah Joseph was born in Amsterdam, so that's not a surprise. But what I've often wondered about is where her family came from, because I read somewhere that many Dutch Jews, in fact, came from Spain, and they had been forced out of Spain. So I immediately seized upon this because it seemed to me tremendously exotic. You know, I always thought that my mother, who had slightly sort of olive skin and really jet black hair, did look like she could have been Spanish or something. I mean, my sister Thomasina was also dark-skinned, and the rest of us aren't. But I always felt that gave a certain sort of Olay quality to the family.
In the early 19th century, Amsterdam was one of the most liberal and popular havens for Jews fleeing anti-Semitism. Most refugees arrived from Central Europe. Collectively, they were known as Ashkenazi Jews. But there was another, much smaller group who'd fled persecution in Spain. They were called Sephardis.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.
This is the group Nigella hopes she is descended from. She's come to Amsterdam's Sephardi synagogue to meet librarian Abraham Rosenberg.
The Sephardi community was much smaller than the Ashkenazi community, but also much wealthier. Many of those people who came here were representing trade firms.
Yes.
So they had some money behind them. The Ashkenazim, they came from Central Europe, and they were poor, and they remained poor, because they didn't have a tradition of large business. And there were very important cultural differences. The Sephardic Jews were part of the educational system and the culture in Dutch society. The Ashkenazi Jews, they were completely isolated from their Christian surroundings.
So what you're saying is that, in a way, there was more fluidity about the life
of
the Sephardi Jews, and the Ashkenazi kind of kept, well, it's difficult to say this, in a way, kept a kind of ghetto mentality.
Yes, but they didn't have much choice. The Sephardi considered themselves as nobility.
Yes.
And they considered the Ashkenazi Jews even less than commoners. It was quite a difference.
Yes. I had absolutely no idea there was such a difference between the life of, say, a Sephardi Jew and an Ashkenazi Jew. I mean, there seems to be such a discrepancy in the two communities, and of course the thing I don't know is which community my lot came from, so that absolutely has to be my task now. I've just got to find out where they came from.
In search of her Sephardi connection, Nigella has come to the Amsterdam archive. Archivist Harman Schnell has found Hannah Joseph's birth certificate.
The birth date is the 10th of January, 1819. And she was born in the middle of the Jewish quarter. And her father was a shoemaker's apprentice. But I found her, but the name is not Hannah Joseph.
What's her name then?
Her name was Hannah Summers.
Summers. Why would that be changed?
Maybe because this was a difficult name in England. Many people who moved to another country had names that were hard to pronounce.
And it is the same person, yes.
Yes, this is the same person.
Yeah.
And now you can also understand why the father was named Coleman in England. Because here his name is Koenraad Summers.
Oh, well, Mother, that's a much better name. You know, the thing is, I would presume, just seeing the name Summers, that to me it sounds more that it would be a Sephardi name than an Ashkenazi name. And yet, when I see that he was a shoemaker's apprentice, I suppose what I feel I've learned today is that the sort of person in that job would be more likely to be an Ashkenazi Jew.
Well, the fact that he is a shoemaker's apprentice doesn't say much, because there were Sephardi and Ashkenazi shoemaker's apprentices in this area anyway. But when you look at the names, like Koenraad, then...
That looks quite Ashkenazi, doesn't it?
Then we go to the Ashkenazi direction. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Koenraad is a name that, in fact, Sephardis will never give to their sons.
Yeah.
Nater is absolutely Ashkenazi.
Yes.